Okay, I'm gonna make a pot roast. So I just put this one pot thing on saute. I'm just gonna add some olive oil to the bottom. Just enough to coat the bottom, so probably, I don't know, a tablespoon or so. And Trent and Tori gave me their old gimbal, so I'm learning how to use it. And I actually have it on airplane mode, so it won't turn off every time. So while this is getting hot, I'm gonna cut onions and peel potatoes. It's funny how many cooking shows I've watched and I've thought, I could do that. And then I realized, how do you fill an hour with conversation? But I will just talk like I'm talking to my kids while I'm cooking. Get out of the kitchen! What do you do? Put that down. No, we're gonna eat in 15 minutes. Quit. This onion, I'm not gonna dice it or make it fancy. I'm just gonna make rings and then just give it a quick rough chop. Because when it's gonna cook for hours and hours on end, it's gonna break down so much that it's not gonna really matter. I'm gonna try to caramelize them a little bit to get more flavor. So I'm not gonna use an onion soup mix, which I know a lot of people do, and that's okay if you wanna use that. At my age, I don't want the salt, so I'd rather control how much salt I'm putting in my food. Just gonna quickly peel some of these potatoes. And I cheated, and I have already peeled baby carrots. So those are easy. I just rinse those before I throw those in there. I had a good day yesterday. I got to see Trent and Tori and Xander outside and play. Xander got a really cool, I guess it's a Jeep. Okay, is this getting hot? It's starting to get hot. I don't want to put the meat in until it's really kind of hot, where it's like scary when you throw something in there and then all of a sudden it's like shh, and you think that you're gonna blow something up. That's what you want it, screaming hot, I guess they call it, so that when so I have meat. This is a chuck roast, boneless, and I'm not a butcher, so I don't know a lot about meat, but I kind of go along with whatever the price is. If it's really cheap meat, you're gonna have to cook it forever to make it tender, and make sure you cut it against the grain. So you can see the grains are going this way. So if I were to slice it, I would slice it that way. The better, I think this was more expensive. So I'm just gonna put some salt. I'm just using Himalayan pink salt. You can use whatever color you like. There's all kinds of salt out there. And I'm using coarse pepper. It's good for steaks and stuff. All right, so let's see if this is, okay, that is really hot. So in it goes. I'm just gonna let it sit there until it almost starts to smoke, and then I'll flip it, then I'll take it out, and then I'll add my onions and try and get some caramelization on those. And Tori is going to teach me how to speed it up in between each little session, so you're not sitting here staring at me for 3 hours while I'm doing all this. All right, so onions are cut, carrots are already pre-done, bottom that way. And if you don't like to chop and you like to cook, they sell potatoes in the refrigerated section. And they're called like hash brown starter kits or whatever. They make potatoes that are just plain potato with no seasoning. And you could buy a bag of those and throw those in. whole purpose if you're working or you're busy is to not spend hours in the kitchen cooking. You just want a nice meal and not eat fast food all the time. The nice part about pot roast is the next day you can make sandwiches with it. With the leftovers, you could put on a pot of rice, add a little bit of ketchup and barbecue sauce to the sauce that was today's sauce, and then give it a totally different flavor, and it'll taste more like a brisket. Okay. So potatoes are cut, onions are cut. Oh, garlic. So I'm going to cut the end off the garlic. This garlic's a little older, so hopefully it's okay. And if not, I have powder. And again, I'm just doing a rough cut. So, I'm going to go, this is where you have to push up to make it go down. There we go. And the way you'll know it's ready to be flipped is when it's not sticking. If it's sticking really bad and you put oil in there, then just kind of let it keep going. Probably just another minute or so. So it's unstick. The one pot's nice because you can do searing, sauteing in it on the saute button. And then once you get everything in it, then I beef stock, I don't have any, so I'm going to use chicken stock. Why chicken stock instead of broth? Because it has more flavor. Because when they prepared it, they used all the different vegetables, so you're going to get a lot more flavor out of it. But, I mean, even if you only had water, then you could add water, Worcestershire sauce, no more than like 2 teaspoons, because that stuff is really strong. You could add a little bit of barbecue sauce or something that already has 2 seasons in it. Okay. So now I'm gonna see if it's still sticking. Oh, it's pretty good. Good. Okay. So you've seared the meat on both sides. This thing weighs a lot, so it's hard to get out. So I'm going to take it out. I'm going to set it on a plate. Now I'm going to add just a little bit more olive oil. I'm going to throw in my onions. You don't have to, but I like to cook my onions and get them a little bit caramelized. It just gives it more flavor. No one will criticize you if you use onion soup mix because you're in a hurry. That's okay. Just trying to get rid of a little bit of the salt. I don't want more salt than I need. Now I'm going to put a pinch of salt and a tiny pinch of pepper. And I'm going to let that. Now I'm going to throw in my garlic. Don't want to throw your garlic in too soon because if it gets too overly brown, it gets bitter and tastes terrible. So I try to put it in at the last minute. I'm gonna add, make sure you shake your Worcestershire sauce. Don't ask me to spell that. Just 2 shakes and that's it. It's probably a teaspoon and a half. Okay, now I'm going to pour in some chicken stock. This is a 32-ounce container of chicken stock. And I think I'm just going to use the whole thing, because I want to make sure there's enough liquid to cover the meat a little bit and to get the potatoes cooked. Now I'm also going to add some red wine, and I would probably put in like a cup. Okay, now meat is not so hot, so now I can put it back in. I'm going to throw some potatoes in there. Potatoes. And again, those don't have to be cut too small because they're going to break down. And there's no egg in there, so you can taste it. If it was raw chicken, I wouldn't do that. But before you put the meat in, you could have tasted it. Just taste it. Right away, I'm like, it needs more salt. And this is weird, but I always smell a spice before I add it, and then I kind of have an idea of what it's going to smell like. This is thyme, so I probably added another half a teaspoon. And right now the broth looks foggy, but as that cooks down, it will turn into a richer red. That tastes good. If you don't like to cook with alcohol, you could use a little bit of red wine vinegar. But like Julia Childs always said, I wouldn't cook with something that I wouldn't consume. So I would never want to drink red wine vinegar. Carrots. David doesn't like carrots, so I'm not going to put too many in there. But I think I'm going to add more garlic. So let me grab some garlic powder since I've already done the garlic. Just a little garlic powder. I don't want to put raw garlic in there, it'll taste gross. All right, so if you have a crock pot or a stock pot, you could do it in that. And then just let it, make sure you have a lot of liquid though, and make sure. And this is weird, but I always smell a spice before I add it, and then I kind of have an idea of what it's going to smell like. This is thyme, so I probably added another half a teaspoon. And right now the broth looks foggy, but as that cooks down, it will turn into a richer red. That tastes good. If you don't like to cook with alcohol, you could use a little bit of red wine vinegar. But like Julia Childs always said, I wouldn't cook with something that I wouldn't consume. So I would never want to drink red wine vinegar. some carrots. David doesn't like carrots, so I'm not gonna put too many in there. But I think I'm gonna add more garlic. So let me grab some garlic powder since I've already done the garlic. Some garlic powder. Because I don't want to put raw garlic in there, it'll taste gross. All right. So if you have a crock pot or a stock pot, you could do it in that. And then just let it, make sure you have a lot of liquid though, and make sure if you're gonna do it on the stove, you're home. Don't turn it on and leave it off. Okay, so now, pressure cooker. I'm gonna do it. I'll start it on high and then I'll drop it down to low just to get it going. You can do pressure cooker. I'm gonna do it on low. I changed my mind. And I'm gonna just leave it probably for 4 or 5 hours. 3 or 4 hours on pressure cook. I'll start with 3 hours. I can tell by the way it smells. If you're doing it in a crock pot, you could do it 6 to 8 hours. If you're doing it on the stove top, you could also do it for 4 or 5 hours. You might just have to lift the lid and add water to it, or chicken stock or beef stock,